Wait. Please. Please. I tried so hard. I swear to God, I tried so hard to keep the baby alive. I really did. I'm sorry. Please, Ben, don't do it. Please. Please, Ben. I can't have another death on my hands. Stop it! God, this is my fault! No!
Why carry around syringes of fatal fucking drugs? Why? Something must have warped you when you were little. Your parents, someone did something to you. Because you are a verified psycho and you feed off this shit.
Are you gonna tell everyone?
No. This is Shauna's mess. You can find some other maid to clean it up. Hi, Shauna. I'm just calling to say fuck you, actually. What if they tell people what? Now that they saw it.
Hey. Fancy shit.
We'll say whatever you want us to say. Yeah, well, we can't really guarantee that, can we?
In 1996, a high school girls soccer team from Muskeg High School was on their way to nationals. Unfortunately, this flight was never destined to actually make it. The flight path had left the plane veering off course about 600 miles north, and everyone on that plane was presumed lost or dead. Survivors of the crash were out there for around 19 months, and upon their rescue, their numbers had dwindled a lot less than to those who had entered onto the plane that day. Who were the members of the Yellowjackets soccer team that got stranded out there in the wilderness? What was their story, and what was their role to play in the girls' survival out there? In this series of videos, I hope to break down each one of the Yellowjackets soccer team that has had a bit of a narrative element or enough context to piece together what their story could actually be. As well as, if their character is still around by the time of shooting this, I will be predicting where their character could go.
That being said, hello wilderness survivors, fellow mudbeards, and Yellowjackets if you're watching. And we're officially starting off on my new series of videos hoping to break down each one of the Yellowjackets. I'm going to be trying to release these leading up to Season 3 finale, but there's a chance that it will actually go past that point. Either way, I'm really interested in diving into each one of these characters and kind of putting my own thoughts onto video form. But I'm sure there'll be many things I missed, so if you know any interesting facts or trivia about some of the characters or actors playing them, then feel free to let me know down in the comments. Either way, with that being said, let's go ahead and get into it.
Oh, that's great.
Either way, with that being said, let's go ahead and get into it. Today, we'll be touching on the character of Misty Quigley, and if there's one word I'd use to describe this character, it would be weirdo. And while yes, there are many other words you could use to easily describe this character, devoted, loyal, intelligent, misunderstood, passionate, maybe even throw a detective in there. The reason why I use the word weirdo is specifically because I feel the term itself perfectly embodies Misty as a character. When you think of the word weirdo, you probably don't think of someone or something that's very flattering. It's easy to see and hear of something that encapsulates this word so well in such a negative connotation. See, Misty Quigley is played by two powerhouse performers in both Christina Ricci and Samantha Hanratty. And the reason I waited till the ending of Season 3 to really tackle how I perceive this character is mainly because this character is very multidimensional. And up until the very ending, I'd say there was a fork in the road in whether they were actually secretly maliciously planning a lot of evil stuff for the Yellowjackets out there and in the adult timeline, or if she really was just a true citizen detective who was just trying her best and doing the most devoted thing she could for her friends. To figure this out, I decided to make a poll about, and it seems most of the people who watch the channel agree that Misty Quigley is just a true citizen detective who's trying her best. The first thing we notice about her character is that she is definitely not on the team, but she is very excited to be there. And throughout the episode, we get a peek into a lot of these characters' lives and what they'll be leaving here very soon on their trip to nationals. Interestingly enough, during a party sequence where the Yellowjackets team does get together before their official flight, Misty is absent. And in one of the few other shots we see of her pre-crash, she is simply sitting by a pool watching a rat drown. Eventually we cut to the events of the crash, and this is where Misty really finds her footing, immediately being able to help and assist and guide the girls towards not only healing and bandaging severe wounds, but also making sure everything's sort of situated. Through these actions, she starts to receive some validations from the girls who are finally starting to admire her and what she can bring to the table. This of course results to one of the biggest moments for her character in her choice to destroy the transponder and hope of any people finding them out there. And it's very indicative that the idea of being accepted and appreciated by others is more powerful than any empathy she could have for this team she apparently cares so much about. See, there's a disassociation between her character. Some people think she really cares about the team of Yellowjackets, but I think she sees the Yellowjackets as a method of finding herself or a group that she is necessarily a part of, even if they don't treat her the best. If it's not indicative, destroying the transponder would make a lot of these people's lives worse and put them at risk. That's very unempathetic. Then you get to these little glances and glares that Misty's always giving during these very interesting scenes, like when the team is fighting or when a leadership role is decided.
Jackie, come on, don't go outside.
Don't pretend like this isn't what you wanted the entire fucking time.
You can see that she kind of enjoys analyzing and predicting the behavior of the Yellowjackets and their sort of dynamic between each other, sort of like watching the rat struggle. This, in my eyes, were easy behaviors to interpret as malicious. But as the characters evolved, you can kind of see a deeper nature to her. See, one of the reasons Misty was so validated out there was because of her medical knowledge. Now, I want to go ahead and thank Samantha Hanratty for this because she threw out the idea that her parents could have actually been involved in the medical field. And while it's a stereotype that doesn't fit everybody, there is a strong stereotype that people with these kind of professions have two different kind of outcomes when it comes to their kids. Either they push this profession onto their kids, which makes their kids veer far away from it, or their profession keeps them busy and neglectful of their kids, and their kids step into the same profession as a hope of some form of connection to them. And given the context we got so far of Misty as a character, I don't really see her parents spending a lot of time hanging out with her and just inspiring her to get into the medical field. I think it's much more reasonable to believe that she is so neglected that she picked up all this medical knowledge as one form of a method to connect with her own family. Which leads into my deeper perspective. I don't think she is that malicious. With analyzing the drowning of the rat or analyzing the Yellowjackets and their behaviors in such a scientific and seemingly abstract way, I think this isn't necessarily indicative of malicious behavior, but more indicative of someone who is just curious about what's going on. Sort of a morbid curiosity, if that makes sense. See, everybody in the world is subject to things like intrusive thoughts, but through several home life factors you can find a moral footing and foundation, therefore helping you indicate what could be seen as okay and not. And I'd argue Misty didn't have the luxury of a sort of moral foundation being presented to her. I don't think anybody was willing to go out to Misty and say, hey, it's really weird you're sitting there and watching rats, maybe you should do something else. Most people throughout the show seem to avoid her. Even so far as the most recent season, people don't even want her involved when it comes to really important conversations about the community. Which is crazy because at this point she's proven she's very helpful. Throughout the story we see that Misty is desperate for some sort of connection to somebody, whether it be to the Yellowjackets, whether it be to Coach Ben, or you can even see in the post-rescue scene, while everybody else may be traumatized and or upset they're not still living out in the wilderness, we could tell that the wilderness wasn't Misty's number one goal. It was attention. And she's the only one smiling on their walk back to have that many cameras and people looking at her. But this also further plays into the future timeline. See, with adult Misty, again played by Christina Ricci, you have an opening where she is immediately being rejected. She's very much trying to push for a date to go on, and when the guy is obviously not interested, she finds clever ways to kind of keep it going either way. The only thing derailing this day and her attempts is the return of the Yellowjackets. And noticeably, as soon as the Yellowjackets do return into her life, she's very much infatuated with them, getting involved, stalking them even, trying to understand more about what's going on. Priorities are constantly shifting to wherever she is needed. She just wants to be wanted. She wants people to pay attention to her like she pays attention to others. Whether that's subconscious or on the forefront of her mind doesn't really matter. But interestingly enough, what happens when she does finally get that attention she's been seeking? What happens when she does finally have someone who wants her as desperately as she's wanted so many people throughout her life? Well, that's where Elijah Wood's character comes in Walter. So far, I believe Walter is a red herring within the series, but narratively, he has been very important for Misty's character. He's basically holding up a mirror to Misty and showing her younger self. And like any of us would do if we encountered our younger selves, we would reach a point where we find them very irritating. And Walter is exactly that for Misty. And that was especially touched upon in this season, where Misty's starting to veer away from Walter. However, you can't tell that it's out of genuine discontent for him as a person, it's more just out of pure neglect of someone giving her the attention she so greatly desired for so long. It is a very common characteristic for those who do feel neglected to end up not thinking that they are deserving of the appreciation or care that someone might be giving them. So Walter doing all this for her and going above and beyond to make sure she's okay would naturally turn her away. But we see throughout the third season that she does come to a point where she learns to accept his help and actually does regret not giving him another chance. This isn't just a sign of her and Walter's relationship growing a little bit, but it also is a huge sign in character growth for Misty as a person. It shows that she's starting to accept some of the faults she's seen in herself, and that's been another beautiful thing to see without this season 3 of Yellowjackets. Misty in both timelines has found more confidence. See, in the adult timeline, Misty is finally standing up for herself. Shauna involving herself in so many things while still treating her so horribly and not giving her the time of day has pushed Misty to the point where she lets Shauna deal with her own mess and simply walks away from a problem. Which is an awesome parallel to the beginning of the series where she was ready to step in whenever she was needed or at a whistle's notice. But while this confidence is very prevalent in season 3, it wasn't as prevalent in the other 2 seasons. However, I won't say that there was no confidence there in the first place. You see, when the series does open up, I'd argue that adult Misty does have way more confidence than anything we've seen of teen Misty so far, outside of maybe season 3. And while no, she doesn't have all the confidence she would need, I think that was instilled in her by Nat and her passing, I do think that some of the events that transpired in the wilderness helped build her confidence to the point we see at the opening of the series. See, we see in the beginning of her relationship with Coach Ben that she is very aggressive and very inappropriate, but through being humbled multiple times by him, she ends up accepting his boundaries. And sure, it may have taken longer than preferred by anybody with a standard, I do think that the fact that she got there is indicative of her character. It's not about avoiding a moral understanding, it's about not even having the foundation in the first place. Once someone tells her or makes it clear that what she's doing isn't okay, there's a very obvious switch in direction for her character. And fast forward to season 3, where she does something as far as actually punch Coach Ben, which for any other character or even just an outside viewer, it's easy to ignore, but for someone like Misty, who is so infatuated with making sure people care about her and forming a connection with people, and very obviously still having feelings for Coach Ben as a whole, to step up and hit him, even if it was out of a rage or passion, takes a lot of confidence, a confidence she didn't have going into the wilderness. The same confidence transpired into her stepping up and defending Coach Ben against the entire Yellowjackets team. See, I'd argue Natalie was more intimidated by being accepted by the girls than Misty during this entire trial. And that's indicative in Natalie trying to convince the girls for whatever reason that she also hated Coach Ben. Versus Misty was very straightforward with her feelings about him and the Yellowjackets as a whole throughout the series. And while she didn't have the foresight to see how telling Shauna that information about Coach Ben could lead to Coach Ben's downfall, you can see the immediate regret in her face. This also builds a resentment towards Shauna that doesn't even get touched upon, I'd say, until the very ending of the season when she gives her a very devilish glare. A glare that all of us as watchers really did feel like was a victory or a middle finger to Shauna because, let's be honest, she was a tyrant this season. But I want to go ahead and touch back on something I talked about earlier in Nat's involvement in her finding more confidence in the adult timeline. After the events of Natalie last season, we could see that the regret and guilt Misty carries has pushed her towards being a better person. And maybe better isn't the right word, maybe it's more of an independent or more tough person. I feel that entire event transpired because of the girl's infatuation with the wilderness, and we already knew Misty wasn't necessarily a believer. However, seeing as this resulted in her own hand killing Natalie, you can tell that it's starting to veer her away from the entire wilderness aspect as a whole. I don't think she referenced it once this entire season. Instead, she was too focused on figuring out the murder of her friends and making sure her friends were okay. as well as donning the leather jacket and finding a strength in herself that Natalie must have given her. Whether it be through the supernatural means or just the impact she left on her as a person, it's very interesting to see her find this strength that Natalie herself sort of carried. But I do find it interesting that both of these characters are probably the biggest characters to fear confrontation as a whole. With Misty just wanting to be accepted by everybody, it's easy to ignore the fact that Natalie also does want to be accepted by the Yellowjackets. In the season 2 finale, Coach Ben even addresses this, but you can also see in the trial that Natalie's playing this entire game like someone who's trying to appease everybody, versus Misty is very much about defending Coach Ben. But I'd argue this trial wouldn't be necessary if Misty was the leader in the first place, because she wouldn't let people think of Coach Ben this way. But unfortunately, the idea of Misty ever being the leader in the series is bar none if not negative, which also leads me to my next point. What is Misty's role? Will she be the last girl standing? I think narratively she deserves to be. I think she's been built up to be the one character who should be the last one standing, and I'd argue she should be the one in the nursing home or taking care of another character like Shauna in a nursing home and just kind of giving whoever's around her what's for, but at least finding some sort of peace based off of all her efforts. However, I also feel that because she's so deserving of all these aspects, she's not going to get it. I don't think she will be the final girl standing, but I do think it's been established that if someone does end up taking her down, they're going to be playing themselves as well. See, in this season, as well as many others, we've learned that she is very prepared for any situation. And in the season 3 finale, Shauna even approaches her, and one of the first things Misty says is that everything's being recorded in that room, and if she does decide to try to kill her, everything will be sent to a drive and she won't know where it goes, and it will be released if she's not able to turn it off. We see that Misty has a whole plan in place and the room being recorded if Shauna does happen to try something. And I think, considering how careless Shauna is as a character in the adult timeline, she's bound to get herself caught. Is Misty the most misunderstood Yellowjacket? Yes. Is Misty the most devoted and loyal Yellowjacket? Yes. Is Misty the most weird Yellowjacket? Absolutely. But I'd argue that one consistency we had throughout the entire series so far is that Misty is the loneliest Yellowjacket. And I think that's a big testament to the character and others who feel lonely and aspire to be something greater. See, no matter how much you're neglected, no matter how much you're even mistreated, you can still find the confidence and character in yourself to become who you feel you want to be. Whether it be a devoted friend, an understanding partner, or just a solid citizen detective, at the end of the day, being a weirdo is nothing to be ashamed of, and if anything, is a superpower. So again, this is just my video on Misty Quigley, a character who could not be portrayed by anyone other than Samantha Hanratty and Christina Ricci. And I mean that genuinely. I cannot see any other person ever embodying such an iconic character. And I really hope to see them both take on a serial killer role in some other series or show. I think that would be amazing. And I wanted to go ahead and take a second to thank one of my new channel members, Danny Mel. Your support really means a lot, and it's what helps me make videos like these at a more consistent level. So seriously, thanks for being one of the official sponsors of the channel. Appreciate the support, appreciate the feedback, and remember, everyone deserves a weirdo who will make them a lawyer cookie cake.